ya instaurado en un par de años y que, bueno, vamos a comenzar. At first, again, welcome to UC&CS Annual Partners Meeting. Welcome Shadi Melba from Egypt. Welcome to Miguel Aguirre, and welcome to Jeff Chang from China. They are our partners that represent us in UC&CS Global in each country. So in this moment, we are going to make a panel with our partners, and they are going to explain us some different convictions and economics statistics in order to know about their countries and in order to know about the investments clients or us can do in that countries. So at first we are going to start with Shadi Melba from Egypt. Welcome, Shadi. Welcome to the annual partners meeting. It's a pleasure to have you in this conference, and also to listen to you the explanations you are going to do. And at first, Shadi, we would like to know some things about your country, and please, if you can present the PowerPoint presentations, and after that, we are going to make some questions in order to know more about your country. So please, Shadi, can you present us the more interesting things, activities, economic and statistics, and the form to make business in Egypt, in Egypt, please? And welcome, Shadi, again.
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Shadi. The panel is yours.
Thanks. It's my pleasure for the first time to have this meeting with all of you colleagues in UC&CS. It is a very great opportunity to share our ideas in regard to our countries, to push the investment and our clients and investors globally. I'll take my time in describing how the matter is going economically in Egypt, and how can our clients take advantage of incentives that is presented by Egypt, and describe the economic climate here in Egypt. In fact, Egypt, from the point of view of establishing companies in the first stage, as we all accountants or consultants, will have a cost that is ranged from 2,000, 5,000 as a regulatory formation cost for companies, varied depend on the legal entity and the form of legal entity in Egypt, since that limited liability companies will gain the lower cost, which is closer to 2,000, and lower requirements for capital. So it is very attractive for any investors to have a limited liability company rather than to have a corporation, which will gain the highest amount closer to 5,000. As you know, Egypt goes through many electronic government procedures to make the matter simply for our investors. So investors now can do a lot of procedures through his accounts and through the electronic government. And now Egypt is ranged about the third countries in according to World Bank Doing Business report, after Tunisia and Saudi Arabia. So the investor can take advantage of the electronic government system that is now government is working on it, even in tax and in other procedure in social insurance and all of these governmental authorities. The cost for closing the companies due to bankruptcy or something like that will be from 1,000 to 1,500, and will take about 90 days. We don't like our clients to go out, but it is like information that we have to say. Cost and number of days for registering property. We have a tax here in Egypt for property, for building and lands and investment property. When transferred from one entity, from one person to another, it is 2.5%. But in case of companies transfer property to another companies, it will have to be subject to capital gain tax. But for individuals, it is 2.5 to 3% from the property from the amount of property value as stated in contract. The country risks have been reduced from 6 to 5 in according to Organization of Economic and Cooperation Development report. The reduction mainly get from the rate of growth. Egypt sustained in last 2 or 3 years after getting from revolution a good rate of growth in GDP, and this push most of those classifying the Egypt to lower risk degree. And the annual GDP for per capita is 3,000, approximate $3,000, and the GDP is 363 billion. In comparison with 2019, 303 billion. This have been jumped to 363. GDP growth is ranged from 3.5 to 5.5. Mainly, this growth is coming from that government begin to give most caring about those activities in the free zone and investors in the new areas like in new industry areas, and begin to give incentives to these industries. We have a lot of investors from out of UK came to Sinai and Suez Canal because the government thinks that it should take care of this area. As you know, Egypt suffer a lot in some times from its west and east border, and try now to get expand in investing in Sinai and Suez, and give incentive to investors by laws to these who will invest in Sinai and Suez Canal. We have free zone about 9 areas like Port Said, Suez. It is 5 cities in Alexandria, here in my city, in which my office located. Then these areas will be giving no corporate tax for free zone, only payroll tax. Egypt expected to have 2% growth in the future. For tax rate, for personal tax rate, it is gradually from 2.5 to 22.5. And for tax about companies, this is a flat rate, 22.5% for all companies, all entities, whatever corporation or limited liability. For SMEs, we have just a law that is passed through that is giving 1% from revenue, which is a flat rate to push investors to go to SMEs industries. And we have a carry forward 5 years, carry forward loss rule is working here. Social security is about 18.75% for employer and 11 for employees. The tax exemption is given for culmination of land and high capacity project and some kind of projects that's giving 30 to 50% as a tax incentive deduction from profit. As per new law issued, is the law is 72 in 2017, law 72 in 2017, that give incentive to deduct for investor about 30 to 50% from net profit if the investor has high capacity project, pharmaceutical, wood industries, cars, manufacturing of food, and SMEs companies. So they have full incentive to deduct 30 to 50% from invested capitals. The tax on property, as we told before, is 2.5. The VAT is 14%. No VAT for exporting. If you have your company here, you can get your raw material in free zone and export it at zero rate. So all exports are exempted in Egypt, or what we call it zero rate, not exemption. So that is a brief about Egypt. I can get your any question from you to describe Francisco.
Yes, yes, I have some questions as it's very interesting, the information. At first, I can see that you have very different free zones that it looks very interesting for many investors. But at first, you mentioned some benefits. What do you think are the tax benefits that could be more interesting for investors using free zone? For example, tax-free for dividends, tax-free for interest, or something like that.
Yeah, look, we have the free zone law that give main incentive, which is exempting from corporate tax. The main tax, which is the corporate income tax, is fully exempted, just linked to volume of exports. You have to export all of your products. Again, you can take plus this incentive issued by new laws, which exempt you from many customs, exempt you from reorganization cost and the startup cost. Every cost that you can pay to authority is exempted. Plus, if you are a free zone, you will take the benefits of zero rate for exports and no VAT tax, no income tax, only payroll tax.
Okay, okay, that is great. And regarding to the industries and activities that in Egypt are developed nowadays, what do you think are the most attractive business in order to make that interesting for investors in your country?
We can talk in this area from two point of view. One, the point of view how the government push the industry and give incentive to make it attractive. The most attractive now for government to push and give incentives, those that are based on manufacturing and tourism area in Sinai and Suez Canal. They are giving the land and maybe exempted from 50% of cost of the land. For the other area about the activity, those that based on agriculture, calmation, exporting of agriculture products are gaining the most incentives because they are exporting. The government is returning to give them about 1% again as assistance for them returning back. So the most important is livestock, calmation of land, and tourism and manufacturing. Logistics, of course, because we have Suez Canal.
Oh, okay, okay, that's great. And finally, one question that I think that is the most important thing in order to make of knowledge to all our partners and all our clients. If you were a broker or if you were an investment seller, uh, why do you recommend invest in Egypt, and who will be the most important things that you have to think if you are going to make an investment in your country?
I think with the investors, if he has an industry that is labor emphasizing or is labor based, so we have here the labor cost is very low in comparison with other countries. A lot of industries from Chinese area came to Egypt in Suez Canal and in Free Zone to benefit from the lower cost of employees and workers here and take the incentive of Free Zone. So they can base their raw material from whatever country, export to whatever country, and take the advantage of getting workers with lower cost in manufacturing industries and in exporting agriculture or calmation of land, because it taking exemption about 10 years. The calmation of land is fully exempted for 10 years this industry which the government considers strategic industries for GDP.
Okay, that is great, because sometimes also in many countries, in cases of Mexico or another countries of Latin America, it is very important the government, the government environment, because that could be specifically reasons to invest or to decide to invest in a country. But for me, and I think for all our partners, it's very clear. Shadi, and we really appreciate your help in this presentation. We know more about taxes in Egypt and more about to make business in Egypt, and we really appreciate the conversation we have in this panel. So thank you, Shadi. I don't know if you have any comment, another thing you want to explain to us and to UC&CS partners.
No, I'm grateful for you all, and I'm very pleasure to have this opportunity to share with you in the conference. I'd like to thank the teamwork also. Everyone helped me in this first time. I'm very grateful for all of you, and thank you.
Shadi, we will be at your commands for each thing, and also we expect that many investors decide to go to all the countries that we promote in this firm. Thank you very much, Shadi.
Excuse me, Francisco. I have to ask to everybody, if you have any question, you can ask them through the chat or open your microphone, please. Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta, lo pueden hacer a través del chat o lo pueden manifestar abriendo su micrófono, por favor. Thank you very much, Francisco.
I think there is no question, but if there was any question, of course we are going to send to Shadi to help us the answer. And thank you again, Shadi, for your participation in this panel. We expect you to see soon. Instead, this COVID is finished, but
God bless you all. Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you very much, and we will continue with our panelists. For next, thank you very much, Shadi. For next, we are going to have the presence of our partner from Uruguay, Miguel Laguerre. I don't know if Miguel is still connected.
Hello, Francisco. Yes, here I am.
Hi, Miguel. Again, it's a pleasure to have your presence in our annual meeting. We have many things to talk about Uruguay. I think Uruguay is a very important country in South America, in Latin America. Recently, we have an important meeting of our representatives of each country in Latin America, and the participation of the president of Uruguay was very impressive. We are not going to talk about politics, but we really know that Uruguay is a very important country in South America and Latin America. And also, at first, we would like to listen to you the explanation about the economic and taxes environments in your country. And after that, I think we will have some questions to you. So please welcome Miguel, and if you can help us with your explanation and with your presentation, the panel is yours.
Well, hello to everybody. It's a pleasure to be in contact with you. I hope so next year we can be face to face with all of you. And well, I'm going to talk about the subject about doing business in Uruguay. Do I start with the presentation, or should I make some comments?
At first, if you can start with the presentation, and after that we have some questions in order to make more dynamic this panel. But can you help us please with the presentation, with explanation of general activities and economic statistics of Uruguay, please?
Okay, excellent. I shall. See. Can you see the presentation there?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, excellent. Well, doing business in Uruguay. The cost and numbers of days for opening a company. The costs are from $1,000 to $4,000. That depends on the type of company. Actually, for example, a PLC, the most common way to start operating a PLC is to buy a shell company because it's the easiest way. And that would probably be near $4,000, the cost to start operating a company. In the case of a simplified PLC or a LLC, the cost is lower. You can afford an LLC or a simplified PLC by nearly $1,000, $1,500 more or less, and the days to start operating would be like 3 days to 1 week. But in 3 days you can start operating with the additive in Constitution. Okay. The cost and number of days to close a company is of $500 and approximately 30 days. The cost and numbers of days for registering property, the cost goes from 0.5 to 3% of notarization fees. To that you have to sum 18% of those notarization fees as legal sums, and approximately you need like 15 days to finish all the procedures to register. The country risk level classification by Moody's is of A3 as of February of this year. The annual GDP per capita is of $16,000 per capita. The total country GDP is of 56,000 millions. The GDP in 2020 had a decline of 4% because of obvious reasons of COVID, and the annual estimated growth for 2021 is of 3%. We had a very good last trimester, so we expect to reach that 3%. Special zones in our country. We have two main special regimes in Uruguay. The first one is the free zones. Free zones, I think it's very similar to what the Egypt partner talked about.
Yes, I think.
That we have all tax, there are no tax in special zones except the Social Security taxes. And we have 12 free zones in Uruguay. The most important are Zona América, World Trade Center, Aguada Park, and Parque de las Ciencias. And we have special free zones for some industries. For example, pulp mill. We have three very big pulp mill industries that have created a special zones for them. And for new projects, you can also present, for example, to constitute a new free zone. And the other special zone or special regime we have in Uruguay are the free port regime. All important ports in Uruguay have a special treatment. We have some exemptions on taxes, but also a very special way to operate. That is that companies can have stock, merchandise stock in the port without having to build that stock. They just, with a bill of lading, they maintain the property, they stock the merchandise, and when they have an order to sell, at that moment they invoice that merchandise, and at that moment the merchandise goes from the port to the client. That's been a very used regime in the past 20 to 30 years when the legislation was created. Well, a recommendation for investments. Farming industry in Uruguay has been historically the most important. So you have cattle, agriculture, forest. Cannabis for medicinal use has been has been a quite new issue in Uruguay because of legislation created some years ago, and it's expected to an industry to grow. Also, software is one of the main industries in Uruguay, have a special treatment with tax exemptions. So it has been a very important sector of the economy. And shared services, this is companies come to Uruguay, they put a headquarters here, and they give shared services for all the affiliates and around the world. Well, the business climate in Uruguay. Uruguay has a stable legal system in which national and foreign investments are treated in the same way. Most investments are allowed without prior authorization, and investors can freely transfer the capital and the profits they obtain. International investors can choose between arbitration and judicial system to resolve conflicts. Local courts recognize and comply with foreign arbitration awards. Free market economy characterized by an export-oriented agricultural sector, an educated workforce, and high levels of social spending. Uruguay has bilateral investment treaties with 44 countries. Tax rate on persons. The tax rates vary from 0 to 36%. You have a minimum in which you don't tax with the rate is 0, and then you have progressive scales that goes up to from 10% to 36%. The tax rate on company is of 25%. Non-resident tax goes from 7 to 12%. Local rent or global rent, well, Uruguay is a quite special case because most countries use global rent, and in the case of Uruguay, it uses local rent. Double imposition treaties. We have in Uruguay 24 in total signed. There are some more which are being studied, and the main three are the tax treaty with Argentina, with Spain, and Germany. The losses compensation, well, we can carry for 5 years the losses. Other exemptions, for example, in tax on rent, on tax on income. Software has been a sector that has been very benefited by this exemption. But there are other sectors that have also exemptions, for example, civil entities, social, religious, cultural, and sports entities. And one very special case is the investment exemptions. And here in Uruguay, there's legislation which companies can present a project for investing, and there are many ways to obtain an exemption. You have to comply, obviously, with certain requirements, and this has been a motor of investment. Many companies have been very motivated to invest using these benefits, which indefinitely benefit because you can deduct a good percentage of the cost of the investment. They give you back taxes. For example, mainly for 40 to 80% of the investment has been a quite common range of to have an example of the benefit you can afford. Exemptions in VAT, in VAT, in products like primary products, mainly like live animals, plants, raw foods, books, wood, and agricultural supplies and machinery. Also, exemptions on VAT on services like property rental, loan interest, under certain conditions, and educational and cultural activities. Social security, housing, pension rates. Well, there you have on social security, you have an employee the cost of 50% of the salary, and a company rate of 7.5%. Health insurance, you have 4.5% to 8%, depending on if you have children or you are married. and the company has to pay a 5% of health insurance. This health insurance has an annual cap, so many cases usually maintain in the annual cap. Tax on property. Companies pay 1.5% of the fiscal net worth on tax on property, and in the case of persons, they pay if you have an excess amount of $110,000 or 2020 in case of families. And the valuation in case of persons is different. As companies, you usually don't use a market value, you use values which are inferior values. For example, in the case of property, the values are much lower than the actual market value. Tax on interest, company pay 12 to 25%, and physical and persons pay 7 to 12%. Tax on dividends are of 7%, and VAT rate is of 22%. And here,
okay. Okay, Miguel, thank you very much. We can identify very important things. For example, it's very interesting to know that 25% of the tax rate companies, because in many countries the tax rates goes to 13 to 35 or 14%. But also, for example, in Mexico, bad rate it's 16%. I see that the bad rate is 22%. But in fact, you have another exemptions that are very interesting. For example, exemptions in bad services, property rental, loan interest, and some another activities that, of course, could be an idea of investment of this country. And regarding to this, we have some questions for you. As you know, Uruguay has been considered an important country in South America because it has a free market. So, can you tell us more about the main benefits of investing in Uruguay, considering the significant growth in the Latin region?
Yes, of course. First of all, with the VAT, I didn't mention, but there is many products have a fee rate of 10%. For example, all the like milk and those kind of products, primary products, they have a special VAT rate. Okay, just to mention an exemption that I omitted in my presentation. In respect to the question, well, Uruguay have some benefits that have made them a place where many countries in the world are looking Uruguay to invest. Mainly, to mention the most important ones, political, social, economic, fiscal stability. I think that is very much appreciated by the investors. Uruguay has been probably in the Latin American area, the country that has maintained those assets in the last year or 2 years. It has a qualified labor force, and it has a reasonable fiscal legislation. I think those and Uruguay has been Uruguay philosophy is to work for the world. You know, it's a small country with few people. We are only 3.5 million. So the vocation of Uruguay is to work for the world, to export to the world. Okay, so that has made Uruguay a good place for other countries to place here their investments to work for other countries.
Okay. Yes, I think you have the presentation explains very easily how is the position of Uruguay in South America. I will change the question, Miguel, if you agree.
think we lost Francisco, no?
Something is wrong with Francisco, so we can hear him. Francisco?
Sorry, I have a problem with my connection. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, now yes.
Okay. Sorry. I don't know what happened. For a few minutes, I lost my connection. But thank you for your patience. And Miguel, as I told you, I'm going to change the question because I think it's very easy to understand what is the position of Uruguay in South America regarding to the stability of the government or the environment of economics and free market. So what do you think about migration? Because remember that unfortunately today there are many problems in different countries in South America, and I have listened a lot that many countries and many people is thinking to make a procedure of migration to countries like Chile and like Uruguay. So what do you think about this, and how can that affect the economics of Uruguay?
Well, Uruguay has a position quite open to migration. No? We have received thousands of people, mainly from Venezuela, Cuba, and República Dominicana in the past years. And I think there's a main consideration that is positive for Uruguay, as Uruguay has a bit the workforce. It's a bit older from the I think from the media of the rest of the Latin American countries. So that I think in that sense it has been well seen that that possibility of Uruguay to receive.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Miguel, the same question that I made to Shadi. If you were a investment seller, no, why do you recommend to invest in your country? What are the most important characteristics to invest in your country?
Well, I think the most important assets that Uruguay have is its stability, its qualified labor force. The farming industry, I think it's very Uruguay. It's very prosperous. We are very productive in farming, the cattle, or in agriculture, and we have a name in Uruguay. For example, in the case of the cattle, has a traceability of all the cattle since it's born to when it's manufactured. I think it's one of the few countries in the world that has that traceability registered and certified. So the consumer can receive when they buy a meat of Uruguay, they know in which part of the country it was born and where did it stay during all its lifetime. And that have made possible to Uruguay to enter nearly all the markets in the world, and we enter at good prices. But well, not only cattle, as I mentioned before, the software industry is very prosperous in Uruguay. The forest has been also a very increasing sector in the economy of Uruguay, mainly because of the pulp mill that have the three very big pulp mills have installed recently in Uruguay, and that has made the forestry sector increase in volume significantly. The cannabis for medicinal use has been it's a strange case, but I think it's like we have an advantage, a comparative advantage, because of the law, of the legislation that has been created for that, and many industries are also investing in Uruguay. Most of them are installed in free zones. They buy the products from farms in Uruguay, and they industrialize them in free zones to export to the rest of the world. And well, for last the fiscal legislation in Uruguay, the local rent that applies also has been for many sectors. For example, for companies that have subsidiaries, many of them have installed here in Uruguay the mother company, and for example, for trading activities, also Uruguay has a very beneficial regime. Many partners of UC&CS know, because we are working with that, and in that case they have a beneficial, because in Uruguay, as they only pay for local rent, for example, when you are doing an activity of trading, most of the trading is considered to be done abroad. So though you pay the same rate of 25%, but you apply it to a very small part of the rent you obtain from that business. Well, I hope I was clear about that, about the answers. And
yes. I think it was clear. I listened very good. I see that here in the chat, I don't know, the 2 or 3 persons had problems with the volume of the explanation, but I think it's very clear. So Miguel, thank you very much for your explanation. Of course, Uruguay is an example of how to do the things and the economics okay or right, no? And we expect that many countries in South America change the position. I think mainly of the governments, in order to copy the good things of other countries like Uruguay, no? So thank you very much for your explanation, and thank you very much for your participation in this panel. We will continue. I don't know if you want to add an additional comment, Miguel.
No. Just, it was a pleasure to talk and be with all of you.
Okay, thank you very much, Miguel, and we will continue with the participation of our partner in China. So I don't know if someone in the meeting of our partners has an additional question to Miguel.
Hi, Miguel.
Hello.
Hi, Miguel. I'm Carlos Reyes from Venezuela. How are you?
How are you, Carlos?
Very fine. Y espero que mi inglés también esté bien.
Por ahora muy bien.
Miguel, what's the regulations? What the auditing and accounting regulations over there? Do you use IFRS?
Yes, we use IFRS. Yes.
All right, and yes, and the national accounting standards.
Yes. Usually, before adopting the international standards, there has to be a law approving it in Uruguay. But actually, the law has approved the last IFRS and also auditing standards. Yes.
All right. And last one, do you use tax consolidation over there?
Tax? What do you mean by tax consolidation?
It's like the accounting consolidations.
Consolidation of the financial statements.
Well,
but in tax, all right?
I don't think so. We use tax consolidation. When you have a mother company that have subsidiaries, you just present one balance. So yes, you can. If we have a treaty with that country, you can use what you pay in the other country in tax. You can deduct in Uruguay, but that would be like a special, like a consolidation. But you start from the balance sheet. You have individual or consolidated. But I don't know if I could answer your.
Yes, I think Carlos and
presents it's a declaration.
Yes, Carlos and Miguel, that is because in some countries there is a specific tax regime that is consolidation tax regime. But for example, in Mexico, that was for many years. Today is that is not applicable. It depends a lot. I don't know if Miguel, if Uruguay is part of the OCDE. If it is the case, it's possible that you cannot make any tax consolidation regime in your country. But I don't know if you are part of the OCDE.
No, I think not yet. We are near, but we are not yet part of the OCDE.
All right. All right. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Carlos, for your participation. I don't know if anyone has any question to Miguel. Okay, let's continue, please. Thank you again, Miguel, for your participation. We will be in communication with you. Very interesting to know many things about Uruguay. And
Okay.
For the next participation in our annual partners meeting, we require the participation of Jeff Chang from China. I don't know if Jeff Chang is connected.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Jeff, thank you very much for your participation here. It's a pleasure to talk with you about business, the business environment. And at first, we would like to listen to you about the main statistics, taxes, and other economic statistics of China. Of course, China in this moment has many things to listen about this country. No? We expect that China will be the most important country, or maybe it is now in this moment the most important country in the world regarding to the investments in Asia, in America, and in Europe. So at first we would like to listen to you about these statistics, and after that we have 2 or 3 questions that we want to know and to know your opinion about these things. So welcome, Jeff, and we listen to you with your presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, you can see the presentation here, right?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes. Thanks so much for inviting me into this conference. It's my great pleasure to be here together with you all. I hope after COVID, we are able to, meet in person. It's now almost 12 o'clock at night here in Hong Kong. So if I say anything wrong, please accept my apologies.
Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, so our Ascend Step Finance is operating both in Hong Kong and in China. And we have professionals in accounting, in finance, in investments, and helping companies set up in Hong Kong and China, and also maybe go IPO or perhaps have other investments. So I myself is an accounting advisor to the Ministry of Finance. So I'm able to maybe share a bit regarding the information in China and also in Hong Kong. So China has a population of 1.4 billion, whereas Hong Kong has about 7.4 million at the moment. And opening a company, China costs about normally 600 to 3,000 US dollar, and it takes roughly about 2 months. Whereas in Hong Kong, it's a little bit more expensive, 800 to 4,000 roughly, but maybe only within 2 days, so much faster. And in China, closing a company may be $700 to $5,000, but it's more difficult to close a company. So be aware of that. It might take some 4 to 6 months, whereas closing a company in Hong Kong may only take 2 days to 2 months. The cost roughly about the same. And the current China credit rating is for Standard & Poor A+, for Moody's A1. And for Hong Kong, the credit rating S&P is AA+, whereas Moody's AA3, so a little bit higher. And the GDP per capita based on 2020, US dollar 10,484 for China, whereas Hong Kong is 46,324 because lower population and earlier development in comparison to parts of China. But the total GDP, because of the population, of course, US dollar 14,722 billion, whereas Hong Kong 347 billion. So quite similar to Egypt, as mentioned by Shadi. And then GDP growth in 2021 in China, even with COVID, still has a positive growth of 2.3%. And Q1 is a V-shaped rebound, actually increased by 18.3% and compare year on year, whereas in Q2 this year is 7.9%. So the projection is 8 point something percent for the full year 2021. Whereas for Hong Kong, last year we had a drop because of COVID, so dropped by 6.1%. And then in Q1 this year, increased also together with China, by 8%, whereas in Q2, 7.6%. So the full year projection is roughly about 5.5 to 6.5%. That's the official figure from Hong Kong government. And unemployment rate is 5.1% in China, whereas 4.7% in Hong Kong. So if you look at the overall GDP growth in China per quarter, you can see it has been quite stable, 6.7%, 6.5%, up to 5.8%. And then last year, because of COVID, it dropped in the first quarter by 6.8%. So, but then immediately after one quarter, it bounced back again to 3.2%, 4.9%, and 6.5%, and then sharply increased this year, 18.3%. and 7.9%, so it's slowing down, but the momentum is still there. And there is quite a bit of problem in booking ships, in booking forwarders, because a lot of shipments, cargoes are now going out of China. So this shows, you know, even during crisis, the rebound is quite rapid and quite quick recovery. So that is very important, especially nowadays. So every crisis, if you can rebound quickly, then you are able to sustain maybe a bit better.
Yes, sorry for the interruption, Jeffrey, but this graphic is amazing. I haven't seen any country that has that this loss, and after that profit or that growth. That is amazing, because it looks like that COVID didn't affect China. It appears, because you recover all the loss in the growth of the 18.3%.
Yeah, remember in China during the COVID period, the close down of the whole Wuhan province. So that is very, amazing. You had to sort of close down the border and shut off Wuhan, and then have complete inspection of almost every person in the neighborhood. So these kind of things are not so easy in some other countries, whereas in China it can be done quite quickly. And besides, the supply chain is already there. So if you have to produce masks, for example, the materials, the machines can immediately call in and then be able to produce that for ventilators, for other medical equipments quite quickly. So that's how it makes it, much faster to recover from crisis.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Let's continue, please.
So regarding taxes, so for China, the tax rate, the individual income tax is roughly about 3 to 45%, whereas for companies now has reduced quite a bit, so it's 15 to 25% normally. And then for the non-residence tax, a concessionary rate of 10 to 20%, normally 10%, is applied to the rental, royalty, and other passive income, dividend also. And then we might be able to get some exemptions. For example, income earned by the PRC resident enterprises from activities in agriculture, forestry, etc., are able to get some exemptions. So for foreign enterprises going into China to work in these areas, we might also be able to get some exemptions. For the Social Security, the employer needs to pay roughly about 40 to 45%, whereas the employee himself or herself pays about 18 to 22% of the salary, so as to be able to pay for the Social Security, the housing, and also the pension. We call it free fund. So the basic salary can be a little bit lower, but then on top of it, there are some free funds on top. And then the on property, generally, roughly about 1.2% of the original value, with some deductions, and then or otherwise 12% of the rental value. And there is capital gains tax involved in China, and the VAT tax is roughly about 3 to 12%. And there can be some reduced rates and exemptions. Whereas in Hong Kong, it's a very simple tax system. So for personal income tax is with a ceiling of 15%. So very low scaling from 2% to at most 15% standard. And then the tax rate for companies is 8.25% to 16.5%. The first 2 million Hong Kong dollars, only 8.25%. And after that, 16.5%. But there are a lot of tax deductions, expenses that you can claim. So there are a lot of other tax that are not applicable in Hong Kong, including VAT and also some non-residence tax. And then the mandatory provident fund, and we basically only have that for employees, is only up to around 5% of the salary, or with a ceiling of $200 per month. So it's not very much, but this is compulsory. And then the tax on property, there's not much tax on it basically. But when you buy and sell, you have a stamp duty, which is quite high, but there is no capital gains tax involved. So in comparison, China is a much, bigger market, of course, but Hong Kong may be the tax scheme because it is much easier and simple. So it's an area where we can, sort of make use of Hong Kong to sort of invest into China and be able to get in and out quicker.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So maybe I can briefly also go through this slide.
Yes, of course.
So
we'll listen.
Yeah, as mentioned in the previous slides, the growth is very stable, and together with a very moderate or low tax scheme, And China is also trying to improve on a lot of different things. So, and one is regarding the dual circulation. This is the external circulation and the internal circulation. External meaning selling to others and buying from others. And then internal is the internal consumption. So China is now encouraging the internal consumption because people are getting richer and able to afford to pay for different products and services. So this is now being encouraged and forming a bigger local consumption and ecosystem. So as with technology and with other additional things going on, China is able to sort of encourage people to consume. And then with that, this is getting a multiplier effect into the whole economy too. And for ESG, is doing a lot of things. One is to have a mission and vision of carbon peak in 2030 and carbon neutrality in 2060. So with that, a lot of carbon emission is to be reduced. Enhancing locations, meaning the Bay Areas. So one of the most prominent one is Greater Bay Area. So this is the southern part of China, including Hong Kong, and that's with 66 million population. So trying to encourage the cooperation within the area so as it's able to develop faster and also with the flow on impact to the suburban areas. And then there are the finance centers, Hong Kong definitely, and Shanghai and Shenzhen. These are some of the top IPO centers in the world. And China is putting on a lot of focus in technology. So big names like Tencent, Alibaba, and others. And there are new innovations coming in, EVs, electronic vehicles, drones, etc. So there are a lot of new technologies being encouraged in the country. I think that's about time. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Yes, we have very, very simple questions that I think are going to be very interesting for our partners of UC&CS. At first, I would like to ask you, what do you think about the business environment between, of course, regarding China, between the United States and China, and what do you think China will assume as a result of this trade war? Because every day we listened in the news that China has a new, I don't know, something like competition with the technologies, with information, very important companies that in the United States they prohibit the introduction to their economics. And also, for example, in Mexico, we have seen a very important modifications to the trade of North America, and we have some speculations about the China products. So what do you think about this trade war, and what do you think is the position of China about this?
I think China and US may have some difference in opinion, different in ideology. But fundamentally, both countries have actually some similar beliefs, like justice, like peace, and economically, actually both are quite interdependent. China is a huge market with 1.4 billion people, and a lot of US companies, multinational companies are in China and selling to China. So, and these are also important factor that should be considered. And vice versa. China invested a lot in US and in US companies and nearby region. So the economic interdependency is already there. It's difficult to unwind everything and say, hey, we do any major cut off. So there might be some difference in opinion and conflicts from time to time, but fundamentally, it's not a major long-term issue. And China is also working on different things to like, for example, balancing the economies with dual circulation. So locally, improving the consumption, that means buying more from outside also. So improving the trade balance is something that, can still be worked on. And also the fundamental issues like pollution issues or any other issues. This is now with determination, putting up an carbon peak 2030 and neutrality 2060. This kind of mission and vision to be able to further improve on the economy and also on the overall cooperation with other countries. So these are the things that are being done, I think, on both sides, US and also in China, to be able to enhance the cooperation or reduce the conflict to, go hand in hand into the future.
Okay. Thank you. Very interesting, the answer, Jeffrey. You mentioned something very particular and very important, that is the culture between population and or people from China, and also the people that the vision or the opinions that had the American people. But it's very interesting to analyze this. We have another question regarding to your presentation. As we see, there are two different forms to build a company in China. Of course, we know that Hong Kong's always has been a part of, I don't know if part or not of China, but it has an independency of the government of China. So you mentioned that there are 3 financial centers. One of them is Hong Kong, of course, but many of the investments also requires a very important place where the finance could be administrated regarding technology, assurance, or another investments. Today, the electronic investments. So, what do you think are the main difference between the financial centers regarding Hong Kong versus another financial centers like Shanghai or Shenzhen?
Yeah, very good question. Hong Kong is still one of the top IPO center in the world. In the past, because of its development, and also because of Hong Kong dollar is free flow, whereas renminbi is still not yet. So the centers in Shanghai and in Shenzhen, and actually in Beijing, a finance center is also being developed. So these different centers are still working together instead of competing with each other. So renminbi offshore is working here in Hong Kong. It's one of the biggest offshore renminbi center, and also with the simple tax system and also the legal framework, Hong Kong is still being seen as a finance center that people put money in, and even some organizations, some enterprises in China, including Greater Bay Area, are putting in money in Hong Kong so as this can be also translated into different currencies very readily. So the position of Hong Kong as a finance center is still in the 14th five-year plan of China. So to maintain this and be able to use Hong Kong as a finance center, and with all the expertise, especially the accountants here in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong accountants are using IFRS, whereas in China is Chinese standard. So there is still some way ahead in order to modify or to transform the accounting system in China, and also to develop different treasury products, different finance center services in China. So there may be still some way ahead. But in Hong Kong, for example, for IPO, the industrial companies may get a lower PE, whereas in China, it may get a higher PE. So there are different sectors and segments that are more preferable in the different financial centers.
Okay, very interesting. At same that the answer before that, I never thought that the financial accounting could be a specific component in order to invest in a country. In this case, that Hong Kong use IFRS and China standard gaps. No, that is very interesting. And finally, Jeff. As a resume of all your presentation, what do you think in order to make investments instead China or instead Hong Kong? What do you think are the most important benefits to invest in your country or in Hong Kong?
The first thing is the stable environment and the stable GDP with relatively moderate tax. And if Hong Kong is very low tax in Hong Kong. And with the development of China throughout the past decades, the new generation are more technology prone. They are very skillful and are able to use new technology quickly, and also be able to work in sort of different companies, embrace technology. So these are the good points that foreign investors would look for. And with the workforce that can, help foreign investors, it's and to be able to communicate, understand each other, and embrace the different new technologies coming in, it's much easier to work that way. And apart from that, the economy is still growing. Even after COVID, it's very it's a V-shaped rebound. So even after COVID, there will be significant growth in China, 8% GDP growth at least, or maybe to 9%, and Hong Kong 5.5 to 6.5%. So this is still very attractive numbers.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, Jeff. As we mentioned before, I think China is a very important example to follow, because I think today is the most important country in the world, because you have changed all the economies, all the statistics, all the form to see and to analyze business, always thinking in China. And we really appreciate your presentation, the conversation we have in this moment, and also our partners will appreciate that. I don't know if there is any question. I think there is a question from Hector Ibeles. I am reading the question from Hector Ibeles, one partner from Mexico. is how could affect the China's economy development to financial problems of the company Evergrande, real estate China's gigant. This is a very important case that we have listened in the news. The problems regarding to this very big company Evergrande. So how could affect China's economy development these problems? Can you help us with the answer, please?
Yeah, okay. This Evergrande, yes, is recently in newspaper and brought a lot of concerns. But the size of the company is actually not that huge, not that significant as compared to the whole market size. And apart from that, China is working on different governance. So this is an area that has to be improved, governance, and also how business is going to improve itself. So it's not necessarily a very bad news that companies may downsize or may even collapse, because companies have to be able to sustain itself, and sustainability is something that is very important, not just expanding very quickly. So this is something that may need to give sort of a lesson to some enterprises, companies, but this will, just like Enron in US, this will be able to provide additional vigilance to the different companies, and to be able to bring in additional learning points in order that companies learn and be able to sustain overall, to be able to have the liquidity on one hand and the impetus to expand on the other hand. And of course, and I'm not saying that there will be no rescue, don't get me wrong, but there could be other different ways to help relieve the situation.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. For me, it's very clear. Again, we really appreciate your time, and we know the conditions of the time in China. So I think there is no questions. Thank you very much for your participation, and it was a pleasure to listen about your conversation of China and Hong Kong. Thank you very much.
My great pleasure too, and it's our duty to work together. And if there is any question, anything we can sort of support, please feel free to let me know.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and we will continue with the annual partners meeting. Only I want to make a precision regarding to Uruguay. Miguel commented in the chat that there was Uruguay was introduced to the OCDE since February from this year. So that is a good news from Uruguay. And also, again, we really appreciate the conversation with Jeff, with Miguel, and with Shadi from Egypt. And we will continue. Thank you, Mauricio. Thank you, all the members of the firm. And I let you the word and the conversation. Creo que podemos seguir en español. Muchas gracias a todos. Un saludo desde México. Bueno, un saludo aprovechando desde Playa del Carmen, que ya llevo un buen rato acá. Saludos.
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you very much for your excellent and interesting presentation. It was nice to meet you, Shadi, and Jeff Chang. Thank you very much.